This question we are talking about, consider f of x is equals to 4 sine x plus 2.5 and g of x is 4 sine of x minus 3 pi by 4 plus 2.5 plus q. So we have something like that. And graph g is obtained by two transformations of the graph of f. And what are those two transformations? And here clearly we can see it. There is a translations. So translation means moving up or moving down or moving left or right. So first of all, if I talk about the horizontal translation, so clearly we have this x minus 3 pi by 2. So whenever you have any function f of x, and if f of x is translated with like f of x minus c, this means the graph would move c units to the right, not to the left. So that's why here this graph would move 3 pi by 2 units to the right. So horizontal translation of 3 pi by 2 to the right. So that is the first thing. And the second one is, so whenever we have any function f of x is changed as f of x plus c, this means the graph would move c units up. So when we compare it, we just have positive 2.5, but q is added. So that's why it's basically a vertical translation. Vertical translation by q units to the upwards. Q units to the up. And this would carry 2 marks in total. So 1 mark is for showing that horizontal translation with 3 pi by 2 units to the right. And the second mark is for showing up Q units up. And this is how the 2 marks are distributed for the sum. Next, the y-intercept of this graph is given as 0, r. Given that g of x is always greater than or equals to 7, and we need to figure out what is the smallest possible value of r. Now, whenever I talk about y-intercept, so that means your g of 0 is just r. So for part B, g of 0 is r. So now what do you mean by g of 0? So if I substitute x as 0, I'll be getting something like 4 into sine of 0 minus 3 pi by 2 plus 2.5 plus q. And this would be equals to r. And here, see, the reason why we are substituting this point is we need to get what is q in terms of r. Only then we will be able to solve it and get the possible values of r. So in that case, this is going to be 4 into sine of 0. This is going to be sine of negative 3 pi by 2 plus 2.5 plus q equals to r. Now, this would change us if you look at it. So this is going to be sine of negative 3 pi by 2. So we know the sine of 3 pi by 2, we should be knowing it. Sine of 90 is 1. Sine of 270, which is sine of 3 pi by 2 is negative 1. But sine of negative 3 pi by 2 would be positive 1. So that's why it's 4 times 1, which is 4, plus 2.5 plus q equals to r. So in that case, basically if you look at it, this is going to be r is nothing but 4 plus, or q is nothing but r, and this is 6.5, so which is r minus 6.5. And this is what we have it as R. This is what we have Q in terms of R. Now, if I substitute it here, so we have given that g of x is greater. Let's keep this thing in mind. So they have mentioned it that g of x has to be greater than or equals to 7. Now, what is g of x? So g of x is nothing but it's 4 sine of x minus 3 pi by 2 plus 2.5 plus q, and this must be greater than or equals to 7. And q, we can replace it. Q is nothing but, we know it as r minus 6.5. And replace q. So q is nothing but r minus 6.5. So we will be having 4 sine of x minus 3 pi by 2 plus this 2.5, then plus r minus 6.5, and this must be greater than or equals to 7. So now, if you look at it, now this r value must be the smallest. So r value would be smallest whenever this value is the largest. So that is something that you need to know it, because if this is smallest, in order to make this to be greater than or equals to 7, the value of r would be slightly lengthy, r would be greatest. So now this has to be the maximum. Now, whenever we have a sine bf, the maximum value would be, so the maximum value of this one has to be 4. So maximum value of 4 sine x minus 3 pi by 2 would be just 4. So from here is what we need to solve for r. This is going to be 4 plus in this case, we should not just take the maximum value of this. The reason is it goes something like this. If I talk about drawing a rough sketch of, let's say, 4 sine x minus 3 pi by 2. Just I'm thinking about drawing 4 sine x minus 3 pi by 2. So normally 4 sine 3 pi by 2 would be something like this. Something like this. And where this is 4 and 3 pi by 2 is here. So now we know this graph is going to move 3 pi by 2 units to the right. So in that case, in a newer graph, basically, of course, this would keep on, the sinusoidal wave would be the same thing. So if I move 3 pi by 2 units to the right or left, basically on the x-axis, what point would lie? So that's what we need to think about. On the x-axis, this particular point would lie. So this particular point would lie. So that is the reason. So that's basically if you take it on the other way around, so it has to be the minimum point. So the minimum point is what we need to take it. The minimum point of this function would be minus 4. So that's why it has to be minus 4 plus 2.5 plus r minus 6.5. And this must be greater than or equals to 7. And if I simplify this, this is going to be 2.5, or minus 4 minus 6.5 is minus 10.5. And minus 10.5 plus 2.5 would be minus 8.5, plus r should be greater than or equals to 7. So that's why the value of r must be greater than or equals to 7 plus 8.5, which is r must be 50. Because this entire, okay, the other way around, why did I took minus 4s? Because this entire graph must be above 7. It must be above that point. So that means whatever the minimum point we have it, even this particular point must be above 7. So now this point should be shifted. Let's say if there is a 7 here, the minimum point from this point, we have to shift it above so that the final result, final graph would be something like this. So that is the reason. So we are taking the minimum point. So the minimum point must be shifted above the 7 because the entire graph must be 7. If I take positive 4 here, so I would get the R value as 0.5. That means I would only shift this maximum point above 7. I would be shifting only this maximum point above 7. So then the graph would be still be something like this. Now some part of the graph would be still be below 7. So that is the reason. So if I want every graph to be above 7 or equals to 7, I have to take the minimum point and check. So that is the reason the value of R is 15. The smallest possible values of R is 15. If R is 15, 16, 17, so of course, the entire graph would be shifted above 7. And this overall carries 5 marks in total. And the marks distribution goes something like this. Here, so putting down this x as 0 and equating it to R, so this would carry 1 mark. And getting this Q in terms of R would carry a second mark. And then figuring out that we need to use minus 4. That would carry 1 mark. And substituting this one would carry another mark. So basically this equation and getting the final answer correct would carry a final marks. So this is how the 5 marks are distributed for this.